And welcome back. Now, this story, there is a shift in the property market between Gauteng as well as the Western Cape. Statistics South Africa has reported a jump in property prices by 7.6% in the mother city, while Gauteng has seen a drop of 1.1%. What are these figures showing us? Joining us now is the luxury division of Everitt International Property Group CEO Rory O'Hagan to speak to us about why we're seeing these type of changes. And also, Rory, on the other end as well, is considering that Gauteng being the biggest contributor to the country's GDP, unfortunately, the property market is not growing as fast as what we're seeing happening in the Western Cape. Why is that the case? A very good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you. What we're starting to see, we all know about the semigration post-COVID from Gauteng to the Western Cape. It was a phenomenon that was quite prevalent, and obviously supply and demand economics tells us that where there's a massive demand for property, the property prices are going to increase. And that's exactly what we saw. So we've started to see property prices increasing in the Cape, and the net effect is that property in Gauteng, and specifically in Johannesburg, has obviously seen a dip. But the reality is there's a whole lot of stats that we've looked at and we analyze that actually are in fact saying that those trends are going to turn around. So the reality is, there are a couple of factors. We basically have had semigration. We know that there have been infrastructural challenges in Gauteng and severe load shedding. So all those things have accounted for the semigration and the move. But what we are starting to see slowly is that more and more people have we call it reverse semigrating back to Gauteng, and a lot of millennials and Gen Zs as well, driven largely by the need for jobs. I mean, 52% of all jobs, according to Stats SA, all job opportunities are in Gauteng. So it's almost a lag effect, if that makes any sense to you, that we're seeing. And we believe that, going forward, and in the next 6 months, we believe that there'll be a reverse in terms of that trend.
Yeah, that's interesting, because if you look at the most recent stats on unemployment, the Western Cape still has the lowest unemployment rate, and it is actually below the national average. Whereas in Gauteng, we are above the national average. So that's interesting what you're saying about some of the reversals and the Gen Zs, for instance, moving back to Gauteng.
Yeah. So what is happening as well is so there are a couple of scenarios which are changing and about to change even more. A number of properties. We are basically, a number of people are reverse emigrating because post the GNU, and we all know what happened there, we believe it will contribute to a turnaround in Gauteng. So our business in the Gauteng area, and I'm talking more northern and eastern Johannesburg, we've seen north of 100 million a month in sales, primarily in the middle to lower luxury market, if that makes any sense. The high-end luxury has still not got its momentum, but why are people returning slowly but surely? Return office mandates, and that is a massive driver. So a lot of the major corporates, major institutions have their head offices in Gauteng, and they are basically saying to people, we want you back in office, minimum 3-4 days a week. And the hassle and expense of commuting from Johannesburg to Cape Town is expensive. So, for people to commute has got more and more expensive. We know what the cost of flights are and the effective cost of living. There's what's happened in Cape Town as well is there's been a lot of sales, and a lot of people have bought based on a yield. Airbnb was. That is a massive trend because of the increase in tourism back to the levels we used to enjoy some years ago. So we're seeing that a lot of people are investing in the Western Cape, but putting their property into Airbnb, which has also created an environment where there's a push up on rental that people pay for property. And the other factor we're seeing, and the reason people tell us they're coming back to Gauteng, is the Cape winters. So we've had 2 quite severe winters in the Western Cape, and as beautiful as it is during summer, the winter, climate and weather forces also play a factor.
Yeah.
So now what's happened is people are seeing great property value in Gauteng, and exactly what the stats are saying to us, that Gauteng's in fact come off even more. You're getting the parity between the 2 provinces is growing. So people are kind of turning around and saying, well, if I look at what I can afford in Johannesburg, in Sandton, or in one of the estates, or in Meyersdal, it doesn't matter where it is, versus what I'm getting in the Cape, and I have to be back for my job, that's driven it to a large extent.
Yeah.
So the disparity in prices between the 2 regions, for those who sell in Cape Town, is also a massive driver.
Let's quickly speak about the interest rate, the repo rate. So we've seen now that there has been a decline. There's an expectation that we could see another rate cut and into the year 2025. A few other rate cuts that have been forecasted. Do you think that would significantly change what is happening in the Gauteng province at all?
Without doubt, because firstly, we have a view that 25 basis points, which is what we've enjoyed so far, is a decrease, and we're starting to see a slight pickup, but certainly not anything significant. I think, honestly, when we start to go below to the 11% and below, that's where and I'm talking prime, we're going to start to see the uplift. And in Gauteng, you're getting great value for money on property. And a lot of the people, I go back to the millennials, the Gen Zs, the people that are coming into the workforce, middle to upper management, they're the people that are very interest rate sensitive. And what we're starting to see is in a lot of the areas that are driven by interest rates, slowly but surely there's a pickup in demand and sales.
Yeah. What about sectional titles? There was a boom at some point when it comes to sectional titles. We've seen now in the city of Johannesburg a decline of -2%, Ekurhuleni -5.1%. What does this tell us about what's happening with the sectional titles?
So now I'm happy you actually brought that up, because we all cast our minds back to 2008 and the global financial crisis. I don't know if we recall, in those days, the drive, a massive drive, was developments in those very areas. There was a lot of development in and around Johannesburg, Sandton, Ekurhuleni, and people were developing like crazy. Developers were applying for development rights, developments were going up. We ended up with an oversupply of sectional title developments in those areas, and it's taken many years to actually clear that out. So supply and demand economics tells us where there's an oversupply, it creates a problem, and it actually ultimately pushes the prices down. What we're seeing, which is quite interesting in the Western Cape, is I'm starting to see the same trend. We were looking last night at some stats and figures on sectional title, and in the city centre and Atlantic Seaboard alone, if you look at sectional title, and I'm talking 2 to 5 million rand apartments, and 50 plus apartment towers and apartment blocks, there are no less than 8 going up and 400 odd units coming onto the market. Now, great to be doing that, but is it not creating the same environment Johannesburg and Gauteng had in 2008, where everyone was applying for developments, and suddenly there is not enough take-up?
Yeah. A final one, Rory. Any other provinces that you think could be of interest outside of Gauteng as well as the Western Cape? And I see, for instance, in the Eastern Cape, you've got Buffalo City there, and the yields there are running as high as 11.2%.
Well, that's exactly right. So a yield-driven investor, and we're seeing more and more investors coming back into these markets, because what we are saying to investors in the Western Cape is err on the side of caution when you're investing in a development, firstly because of your capital upside, secondly because there's a lot of Airbnb-driven investments. Buffalo City, as an example, your entry point to invest is a lot lower and your yield higher, which is great, but there's still capital upside for an investor. Another great province to watch is Natal. If I look at the Natal North Coast and the relative value that you're getting there and the yield-based investments that you're going to get there, it is looking also as a province looking very positive. And in Johannesburg, we're seeing yields in some cases of 12 to 15, even 20%. Yeah. So your yield-based buyer is now looking with interest at the other provinces as well.
And I guess, and finally, the story for authorities here is that a lack of service delivery also has an impact on the value of the property that I have invested in.
100%.
Thank you so much 100%. For your time. Luxury Division CEO of Everitt International Property Group there, Rory O'Hagan, on some of the stats that have been released by Stats SA looking at the property market. And so far, the one that is leading is Buffalo City in terms of the metro, is 11.2% there when it comes to freehold. And the Western Cape is a province leading at 7.6%. And Gauteng, the only province where you are actually experiencing a decrease in the property prices.